Adam Thompson, a sharp-suited businessman with a no-nonsense attitude, was seated comfortably in the luxurious first-class cabin of the flight from New York to Los Angeles. He had just wrapped up an important meeting, and the flight was his time to relax before diving into more business. The moment he sat down, he pulled out his phone, scrolled through his emails, and leaned back into his plush seat, preparing to zone out for the next few hours. The flight was relatively calm, until, of course, a man entered and sat down right next to Adam. At first, Adam didn't think much of it. He'd seen plenty of odd people on flights, especially in first class. But this guy, he was different. The man, tall, dressed in a wrinkled shirt, with unkempt hair and dark sunglasses, seemed out of place. Adam furrowed his brow as he looked over at the man, who had already stretched out in his seat, looking entirely too comfortable. Adam was a firm believer in order and professionalism, and this man? He exuded the kind of laziness Adam couldn't stand. "Great," Adam muttered under his breath. Another one of those people who thinks they can just slouch around, taking up all the space. The man's behavior was almost deliberately disruptive. He was loud, fidgeting, and kept tapping on his phone screen, as if he had no concept of the importance of the moment. It wasn't that Adam was a snob. Okay, maybe a little, but the sheer disregard for decorum was infuriating. Then it happened. The man next to him stood up abruptly, brushing against Adam's arm. He walked down the aisle to the restroom, but not before dropping a few choice words. "You know," the man said in a slightly raspy voice, "this is exactly why I hate flying. The system's broken." Adam blinked in surprise. Did this guy think he could just talk like that in first class? For a moment, Adam couldn't help himself. He looked up from his phone, eyeing the man as he returned to his seat. His annoyance bubbled up. "Tell me about it," Adam said, barely holding back. "You don't see too many people around here who actually get what it means to be present. I mean, look at you, coming in here with no care for anything." The man didn't respond immediately. He just nodded and sat down. Adam was expecting a quick response, but the man just settled back into his seat, as if unbothered by the confrontation. Adam almost felt insulted that this guy didn't take the bait. After all, Adam was a successful businessman. He'd spent years climbing to the top of his industry. He worked hard. He played hard. And this guy, whoever he was, seemed to think he could just walk in, look like a disheveled mess, and take a first-class seat like it was nothing. The next few minutes felt like an eternity. Adam turned back to his screen, but his thoughts kept wandering. The anger was there, simmering. Who did this guy think he was? Adam Thompson wasn't always the polished businessman he was today. His rise to success had been anything but easy, and it was a journey filled with struggle, setbacks, and the occasional sacrifice. Born and raised in the small town of Westfield, Adam was no stranger to hard work. His father, a mechanic, and his mother, a high school teacher, worked tirelessly to provide for their family. They taught him that success didn't come easily, it had to be earned. Growing up, Adam wasn't the most popular kid in school. He wasn't athletic or particularly charming, but what he did have was an unwavering determination to succeed. He studied relentlessly, stayed focused on his goals, and never let anything distract him from his dream of making it big. He had a single goal: to escape the small town and prove that he could do something extraordinary with his life. After high school, Adam moved to New York City with nothing but a small savings account and a burning ambition to prove himself. He worked multiple jobs: bartender, waiter, and office assistant, just to make ends meet. But through all of that, he kept his eyes on the prize. Every night after work, he would pore over business books, learning about finance, strategy, and leadership. He was driven by the idea that, if he worked hard enough, he could climb to the top. It wasn't long before Adam's hard work started to pay off. He landed a job at a startup tech company, where he quickly rose through the ranks, outshining many of his colleagues with his sharp mind and relentless work ethic. Over time, he built a reputation for being a go-getter, someone who wouldn't stop until the job was done. His success led to bigger opportunities, and soon he was running his own consulting firm, advising Fortune 500 companies. But along with success came arrogance. Adam became accustomed to the finer things in life: the luxury cars, the expensive suits, and the private jets. The more money he made, the more detached he became from his humble beginnings. He found himself looking down on those who weren't as successful as he was, thinking he had somehow earned the right to be superior. His personal life began to suffer as well. Adam's marriage to his college sweetheart, Rachel, had started to fray. What had once been a loving, supportive relationship had become a distant partnership held together by their shared business interests. Rachel was still supportive, but Adam's increasing obsession with his career meant he was hardly ever present. He was always traveling for work, too busy to have real conversations, too absorbed in meetings to spend quality time with her. And it wasn't just Rachel. His friendships had also become superficial. He'd stopped making time for the people who mattered most, his old friends from Westfield, the ones who had known him before he became Adam Thompson, successful businessman. He was too busy for them, too busy to remember where he came from. But all of that was about to change. His life, for better or worse, was on the brink of a major shift. The incident with the man on the plane, who, Adam still hadn't figured out, was Johnny Depp, wasn't just a random occurrence. It was a catalyst, a wake-up call. It was at that moment, sitting in the first-class cabin, watching the man who had become the target of his insults, that Adam felt a pang of regret. But it wasn't just about the insults. It was about everything. The life he'd built, the relationships he'd neglected, the person he'd become. The man seated next to him, the one he had judged so harshly, was the first person in a long time to make Adam question his own character. As the flight continued, Adam couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't quite right. His annoyance had turned into a strange unease, something that gnawed at him from the inside. He glanced over at the man in the seat beside him. There was still something oddly familiar about him, though Adam couldn't quite put his finger on it. The man was casually sipping on a glass of champagne now, his demeanor calm, almost too relaxed for someone in a first-class cabin. Adam had to admit, the man had an air of confidence, one that didn't seem to be rooted in arrogance or pride. It was just confidence. He was like someone who knew exactly who he was, where he'd been, and where he was going. "Do you mind if I ask, what's your name?" Adam finally said, breaking the silence. His voice was sharp, more curious than kind. The man didn't respond right away. Instead, he simply looked out the window as if pondering the question. Then, with a casual shrug, he spoke. Johnny Depp." Adam's eyes widened for a split second, but he quickly regained his composure. "Johnny Depp? The actor?" he asked, his voice laced with skepticism. "That's the one," Depp replied with a smirk, clearly enjoying Adam's stunned reaction. He leaned back in his seat, crossing his arms as he continued. "But you're probably more familiar with my public persona than the real me. Most people are." Adam was speechless for a moment. He hadn't expected this. Johnny Depp, the famous actor, the man whose face was plastered on every movie poster, was sitting right next to him on this plane, wearing sunglasses, looking completely ordinary. "Well, I guess you could say you've got the luxury of flying in style too," Adam said, trying to regain some sense of control over the conversation. "But if you don't mind me saying, you don't exactly look like someone who belongs in first class. I mean, you look, well, a bit scruffy." Johnny let out a low chuckle, a hint of amusement in his eyes. "I've never been one to follow all the rules. I don't fit into the mold of what you might expect, and I'm perfectly okay with that." Adam, still processing the fact that Johnny Depp was sitting right next to him, couldn't help but feel a little embarrassed by his earlier comments. What had he been thinking? This was a Hollywood legend, someone whose career had made him a household name around the world. And here he was, sitting next to him, probably laughing on the inside at Adam's ridiculous judgment. "Look, I didn't mean it like that," Adam began, his voice less confident now. "I've just been in a rush, and I've had a stressful few days. I didn't mean to offend you." Johnny raised an eyebrow. "Don't worry about it. It's nothing I haven't heard before. But it's funny how people often judge others based on how they look, or their reputation, without taking a moment to get to know them first, isn't it?" Adam blinked, realizing that Johnny wasn't just talking about the flight or the moment at hand. He was talking about something bigger, something that Adam himself had struggled with for years. The idea that success, image, and status often dictated how people were treated in society. "Yeah, I guess you're right," Adam replied, his tone softer now, as if Johnny's words were starting to sink in. I've been guilty of that myself, and honestly, I don't even know why I'm telling you this. Johnny gave him a knowing smile. Sometimes it's easier to open up to a stranger than it is to someone you know. Adam's mind began to race. How had Johnny Depp, the man who had lived a life of fame and fortune, come to this? How had he ended up on this flight, dressed down and clearly trying to keep a low profile? Something wasn't adding up. But just as Adam was about to ask another question, the flight attendant approached, offering more drinks and snacks. The moment was broken. Still, Adam couldn't shake the nagging feeling that something deeper was going on. Johnny Depp was more than just the man who had been insulted moments ago. There was a story here, a story that Adam needed to understand. Little did he know, this conversation would be the beginning of a revelation that would change the course of his entire life. As the plane soared above the clouds, Adam found himself unable to focus on anything other than the man sitting next to him. Johnny Depp. Of all the people Adam had expected to encounter, this was far beyond what he could have imagined. The sheer absurdity of it all wasn't lost on him. He had been ready to dismiss Johnny, to make assumptions about him based on his appearance and attitude. But now, sitting in the cabin, facing the man who had starred in some of the world's biggest movies, Adam couldn't help but feel small. There was a silence between them now, a strange quiet that hung in the air. Adam glanced over at Johnny, who had reclined in his seat, his fingers absent-mindedly tapping on the armrest. He looked relaxed, but there was an air of something deeper in his eyes, something that suggested that beneath the public persona, there was a life of complex stories and challenges. Adam wanted to know more, but he didn't know how to ask. He had spent most of his life working in high-stakes business meetings, where every conversation was carefully calculated. But now, here, with Johnny Depp, he was at a loss. After a few moments, Johnny broke the silence again. You know, Johnny said, his voice calm and unhurried, people have a tendency to think that fame or money can solve all your problems. But the truth is, it only brings a new set of challenges. Adam raised an eyebrow. Is that what you think? I've seen people chase fame, hoping it'll fix everything. That doesn't make any sense to me. Johnny gave a half smile, his gaze distant. It doesn't make sense to anyone until they get a taste of it. Trust me. You may think fame and wealth are the answers, but they come with their own demons. I've dealt with more than most people can even imagine. Adam wasn't sure how to respond to that. He had heard rumors, of course, the tabloids, the scandals, the ups and downs of Johnny Depp's public life. But hearing it from him directly, from the man himself, was different. It humanized the whole thing. So, what's it like? Adam asked, curiosity beginning to overtake his initial skepticism. Being Johnny Depp, I mean, is it everything people think it is? Johnny chuckled softly. Oh, it's everything they think it is, and nothing like they think it is. The constant attention, the pressure, the expectations. It's like living in a fishbowl. People assume you've got it all, but the truth is, no one really knows what you're going through behind closed doors. There was a weight to Johnny's words that Adam couldn't ignore. He shifted uncomfortably in his seat, suddenly feeling very out of place. For all the success he had achieved, for all the power and control he had in the business world, he realized that he had no idea what it was like to walk in Johnny's shoes. As they spoke more, the conversation veered from the surface-level pleasantries and deepened into something more personal. Johnny told Adam about his early years, his struggles in Hollywood, and how he had come to terms with the realities of fame. He spoke about the public scrutiny, the failed relationships, and the sense of isolation that often came with being in the spotlight. Adam was taken aback. He hadn't expected any of this. The man he had seen as nothing more than a famous actor, someone he could easily judge from a distance, had layers, depth, and pain. Johnny wasn't the larger-than-life figure the tabloids had painted him as. He was just a man, like everyone else, trying to figure it all out. You know, Adam, Johnny said quietly, as the plane began to descend into Los Angeles, we all have our battles. Fame doesn't protect you from the tough stuff. It just makes you more visible while you're fighting it. Adam paused. That was the moment when everything clicked. He had been so focused on his own achievements, his own success, that he had failed to see the struggle behind the people around him. He had spent years thinking that climbing to the top of the corporate ladder would solve all his problems. But Johnny, despite everything he had accomplished, was still fighting his own battles. Johnny's words echoed in Adam's mind as they landed in Los Angeles, the city sprawling below them. He realized that the world of business wasn't the only world where people were striving for something more. Everyone, in their own way, was fighting for meaning, for peace, for a sense of belonging. As they taxied to the gate, Adam felt a strange connection to the man sitting next to him. The anger, the judgment, it all seemed so insignificant now. What mattered, he realized, was the understanding that everyone had their own struggles. And maybe, just maybe, he was starting to see his own life from a new perspective. As the plane touched down at Los Angeles International Airport, Adam's mind was a whirlwind. Johnny Depp, the man he had insulted just hours before, had become more than just an actor to him. He had become a mirror, a reflection of all the things Adam had taken for granted in his own life. They walked off the plane together, but the tension had shifted. There was an unspoken understanding between them now, something deeper than the awkwardness of their earlier exchange. Johnny, despite his fame and history, wasn't just the man everyone thought they knew. And Adam? He wasn't just the successful businessman he appeared to be. They exchanged a few more pleasantries as they navigated the terminal, and Adam found himself feeling oddly nervous. He didn't normally feel like this around people, especially celebrities. But something about Johnny's calm demeanor and vulnerability had disarmed him. Johnny wasn't the first celebrity Adam had met, but he was definitely the first one who had made him rethink his own life choices. "Hey, Adam," Johnny said as they reached the baggage claim. "I'm staying in LA for a few days. If you're free, maybe we could grab a coffee? There's a lot I think you should hear. Not just about me, but about life. I think you've got a lot to learn." Adam was taken aback. "What do you mean?" Johnny smiled knowingly. "You've been living your life by a set of rules that you didn't even create for yourself. It's not too late to change that." Adam was silent for a moment, digesting Johnny's words. He had spent his entire life building a career, achieving success, and accumulating wealth. But at what cost? What had he lost along the way? What had he sacrificed? As they stepped out of the terminal, Adam's phone buzzed. It was a text from Rachel. "Adam, I think we need to talk. I've been thinking a lot about where we're headed. Something doesn't feel right anymore." His heart sank. It wasn't the first time Rachel had sent him a message like this. But now, in the context of his conversation with Johnny, it felt different. His life, his marriage, his career, his whole identity was starting to unravel. "Everything okay?" Johnny asked, noticing the look on Adam's face. Adam glanced down at his phone, feeling a weight on his chest. "I don't know. It's my wife. We've been having problems. I don't know if she wants to stay with me anymore." Johnny's expression softened. "It's not easy. Relationships, careers, the pressure of everything. It piles up, and before you know it, you've lost sight of what matters most." Adam took a deep breath, realizing just how true Johnny's words were. In his pursuit of success, he had neglected his marriage, his friendships, and most of all, himself. He had been so focused on climbing the ladder of success that he hadn't noticed he was losing the very things that made him human. "Maybe it's time for a change," Adam said quietly, more to himself than to Johnny. Johnny nodded, a small but knowing smile playing on his lips. "The hardest part is realizing it. The second hardest part is doing something about it." Adam's thoughts were interrupted when a car pulled up to the curb. A sleek black SUV, ready to take Johnny to his destination. Johnny turned to Adam, giving him a long, thoughtful look. "Think about what I said. Change isn't easy, but it's always possible. Don't wait until it's too late to start over. You can always choose a different path, Adam. And it starts with being honest with yourself." Adam watched as Johnny climbed into the SUV, the door closing with a soft thud. The car pulled away, and Adam stood there, staring after it. His thoughts were swirling, the weight of the conversation pressing on him. He had a choice to make, a difficult one. The text from Rachel still hung in the air, a reminder of everything he had been neglecting. He could keep running, keep pushing forward in the same direction, blind to the cracks in his life, or he could finally face what needed to be fixed. He opened his phone, ready to respond to Rachel. But before he could type anything, a new text came through from an unknown number. "Hey Adam, it's me. You don't know me, but I've been following your company for a while. I have an investment opportunity that could change everything for you, if you're interested. Let's talk soon." Adam stared at the message. The familiar rush of excitement and ambition flooded his chest. Here it was, another business opportunity, another chance to grow. His mind immediately began calculating the potential gains. But then he thought back to what Johnny had said. Was this really what he wanted? Was chasing more money and success the answer? He sat there for a moment, holding the phone in his hands. The decision felt so clear now, but it was still so difficult to make. Adam sat in his car for several minutes after Johnny's departure, the text from Rachel still unread on his phone. His mind raced. He wasn't used to feeling this conflicted. Every decision he had made in his career, every choice that had led him to his position, had been calculated, strategic. Yet, now, in the face of something truly important, his personal life, he didn't know what to do. Rachel's message echoed in his head, and the words felt heavier with every passing second. "We need to talk." It was cryptic, but there was no mistaking the urgency in her tone. He had been putting her off for months, burying himself in work, thinking that everything would be fine as long as he kept climbing. But now, after everything Johnny had shared, Adam wasn't so sure anymore. His marriage, his happiness, his life, they weren't as secure as he had once believed. He glanced back at his phone, fingers hovering over the keyboard. What could he say? What could he do to fix the damage he had caused? The question lingered. Suddenly, Adam's phone buzzed again, and this time, it was a call from his assistant. He almost didn't answer, but with a deep breath, he pressed the button. "Adam," his assistant's voice crackled through the line. "There's an urgent meeting request. A potential partner is in town, and they want to meet with you today." Adam's stomach twisted. It was always like this, work, always work. His company was growing, expanding, and the demands were endless. He knew that if he didn't take the meeting, it might be a missed opportunity. But right now, his mind wasn't on business. It was on Rachel. It was on the way his life had gotten out of balance. "Can it wait until tomorrow?" Adam asked, his voice strained. "I'm afraid not, Adam. They're on a tight schedule. If you don't meet today, they might look elsewhere." Adam closed his eyes, feeling the weight of it all. He had already promised himself that he would finally face the truth with Rachel, that he would confront the issues in his marriage and make a decision. But business was always right there, demanding his attention. "Fine," Adam sighed, rubbing his forehead. "Set it up. I'll be there in an hour." The call ended, and Adam sat there for a moment, feeling an unsettling emptiness creep in. It was a familiar feeling, the nagging realization that he was constantly caught between two worlds, work and personal life, and the constant pressure to keep both in motion. But lately, it felt like he was losing grip on both. When Adam arrived at the conference room, he tried his best to mask the unease that had followed him from his car. He was greeted by a sharp-looking young man in a suit, who introduced himself as Liam Walker, the head of a tech company that had been eyeing Adam's company for a potential acquisition. Liam extended his hand. "Mr. Harris, thank you for making time. We've been following your work for a while, and we think there's an incredible opportunity here for both of us." Adam shook Liam's hand, his mind still partly elsewhere. The meeting started off as expected, talk of numbers, projections, and potential synergies. But Adam found himself zoning out. The words blurred together, and his eyes kept drifting to the clock, as if time itself were ticking away from him. Finally, Liam stopped talking and leaned back in his chair, studying Adam intently. "Mr. Harris, you don't seem fully present today. Is everything okay?" he asked. Adam was taken off guard. He had always prided himself on being a great listener, a sharp negotiator, but in that moment, he realized how disconnected he had become from everything that mattered. His thoughts were still back with Rachel, still on the verge of unraveling. "I'm sorry," Adam said, shaking his head. "It's been a long day." Liam raised an eyebrow. "You know, there's something to be said about balance in life. We've worked hard to get where we are, but it's about more than just success. It's about people, relationships. If you don't have that, what's the point?" The words hit Adam like a punch to the gut. He was used to hearing advice about business, about markets, about strategy. But this was something he hadn't expected. And it echoed what Johnny had said just hours ago. The parallels were undeniable. I appreciate that, Adam said quietly, but I'm not sure if I'm in the right place to think about that right now. Liam smiled, sensing the shift in Adam's mood. I get it, but let me tell you something. At some point, you'll realize that all the success in the world won't make up for lost time. I've seen it happen to too many people. You don't want to be one of them. Adam's thoughts were swirling. The words that Johnny and Liam had spoken, the tension in his marriage, the frantic pace of his life. It was all too much. He had been living with the illusion that everything could be controlled, that success and wealth would be enough to secure his future. But now, he wasn't so sure. The cracks in his life were showing, and there was no ignoring them anymore. The meeting continued, but Adam wasn't truly present. He felt like he was watching his own life from the outside, disconnected and distant. It wasn't until the meeting wrapped up and he stood to leave that Adam realized the choice he had to make. By the time Adam left the meeting with Liam, he was exhausted, not just physically, but emotionally. The weight of his decisions, of the years he had spent neglecting the very things that mattered most, was beginning to catch up with him. He had always been a man of action, someone who could take charge, make decisions, and move forward without hesitation. But now, with his marriage in turmoil and his career at a crossroads, he was paralyzed. Sitting in his car, Adam stared at the phone in his hand. Rachel's message was still there, unread. She had asked for a talk, but he wasn't sure what that conversation would even look like anymore. They had been drifting apart for so long, each of them stuck in their own world, too busy to really connect. Was it too late to fix it? Could he even fix it? As the car idled in the parking lot, Adam found himself thinking back to his conversation with Johnny Depp and the words that had struck him the most. You've been living your life by a set of rules that you didn't even create for yourself. It's not too late to change that. What had Johnny meant? Was it possible to change his entire life? To walk away from the person he had become, just like that? His thoughts were interrupted by a call. It was Rachel. Hey, Adam said, his voice tight. Adam, we need to talk. Rachel's voice was soft but firm. Can you come home? His heart skipped a beat. This was it. This was the moment he had been avoiding. He could feel the tension between them, the unspoken distance that had grown over the years, but now it felt like it was all coming to a head. I'm on my way, Adam said, his voice steady, though his mind was racing. As he drove back to the house, the familiar streets of his neighborhood felt almost surreal. Everything seemed the same. Nothing had changed outwardly, but Adam knew, deep down, that everything was different. He wasn't the same person who had left that morning, and he had a feeling that Rachel wasn't the same person either. When he arrived at the house, Rachel was waiting for him in the living room. The soft glow of the lamp illuminated her face, but Adam could see the weariness in her eyes. She had always been his rock, the steady presence in his chaotic life, but he had taken her for granted. How many times had he put work before her? How many times had he let her down? Adam, she said, her voice trembling just slightly, I've been thinking a lot about us, about where we're going. I don't know if I can do this anymore. The words hit Adam like a punch to the gut. He had expected this. Some part of him had known that this moment was coming, but it still hurt. It hurt more than he could have imagined. I know I haven't been there for you, Adam said, his voice thick with emotion. I've been so focused on everything else, on work, on building something that I thought mattered. But I've lost sight of what really matters. I've lost sight of you. Rachel looked at him, her eyes filled with both pain and understanding. I don't know if it's enough, Adam. I don't know if you can fix this. You've been distant for so long, and I've been trying to fill the space you've left, but I can't keep doing this alone. Adam took a step closer to her, feeling the gravity of the situation weigh heavily on his shoulders. He had always believed that he could fix anything with enough effort, enough drive. But now, standing here with Rachel, he realized that some things couldn't be fixed with hard work alone. I love you, Rachel, Adam said, his voice raw. I know I've messed up, but I want to change. I want to be the man I used to be, the man who was there for you. I don't want to lose you. Rachel's eyes softened, but there was still a hint of doubt in her expression. Do you really mean that? Or is this just another one of those moments where you're telling me what I want to hear? Adam swallowed hard. I'm done making excuses. I've been running from the truth for too long, and I don't want to run anymore. I want to fix this, Rachel, but it's going to take time. I know that, but I'm ready to put in the work. Not just for the company, but for us. For you. For the first time in a long time, Rachel didn't respond immediately. She just looked at him, as if weighing his words. Adam could feel the tension in the air, the uncertainty of whether she would believe him, whether she would give him another chance. But he couldn't control that. All he could do was speak his truth and hope she saw the sincerity in his eyes. I want to believe you, Adam, she said finally, her voice quiet. But I need time. I need you to show me, not just tell me. Adam nodded, understanding. I will. I'll show you. I won't let you down again. Rachel's gaze softened, and for the first time in what felt like forever, she gave him a small, hopeful smile. Okay, I'm willing to try too. Adam felt a wave of relief wash over him, but he knew the hard part was just beginning. He had to prove himself, not just to Rachel, but to himself. He had spent so much time building his empire, chasing success, that he had forgotten what truly mattered. But he wasn't going to let that be his legacy. He was going to fight for what was right in front of him. His marriage, his love, his future. The days after the conversation with Rachel were a blur of emotions. Adam knew that nothing was going to change overnight, but the moment she had agreed to try again had given him a renewed sense of hope. For the first time in a long while, he felt like he had a purpose beyond his work. He had a chance to restore the most important part of his life. But despite the renewed optimism, things weren't easy. The first few days were filled with awkward silences, careful conversations, and tentative gestures. It was like they were both trying to remember how to love each other again, how to talk without the weight of years of neglect hanging over them. Adam had always been the kind of person who thrived on structure and planning, but he realized that this situation didn't have a clear roadmap. There were no easy fixes, no quick solutions. It was going to take time, patience, and a lot of self-reflection. One evening, after a long day at the office, Adam returned home later than usual. The weight of the day still hung over him, but as he walked through the door, something felt different. The house was quieter than usual, the soft hum of the city outside barely audible. He took a deep breath and noticed the smell of something familiar, a home-cooked meal. "Rachel," he called out. "In the kitchen," her voice answered, soft but steady. Adam walked toward the kitchen, where he found Rachel standing by the stove, stirring a pot of soup. Her back was to him, but as soon as she heard his footsteps, she turned, offering him a gentle smile. It wasn't one of the wide, carefree smiles they used to share, but it was something that gave Adam a glimmer of hope. "Hey," Adam said, trying to hide the fatigue in his voice. "It smells great in here." Rachel's smile grew a little, but it was still cautious. "I thought you might be hungry. It's been a long week for both of us." Adam nodded, feeling the weight of her words. He knew she was right. It had been a long week, full of hard conversations and uncomfortable realizations. But in that moment, sitting across from her at the kitchen table, he felt like they were taking the first real step forward. "I've been thinking," Adam said as he picked up his spoon, "about everything. About how I've been so caught up in my work, in my own world, that I forgot what really mattered. I've let you down, and I can't change the past. But I want to make it right. I'm not perfect, and I'm not going to pretend I am. But I want to be here for you. Really here." Rachel listened quietly, her gaze softening as she met his eyes. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. It was as if the weight of their past had settled between them, and now they were both navigating the fragile present, unsure of what would come next. "I believe you," Rachel said at last, her voice steady. "But you're right. It's not going to be easy. We've got a lot of work to do. I need to know that you're really committed to changing, not just saying the words." Adam reached across the table, taking her hand gently. "I'm committed, Rachel. I know it won't be easy, but I'm willing to fight for us. To put in the effort every single day." She squeezed his hand, her expression a mix of hope and hesitation. "I need that. I need you to show me that you're here, not just physically, but emotionally. I can't do this alone anymore. Adam nodded, feeling the weight of her words. For years, he had been so focused on his own ambitions that he had failed to see how alone Rachel had felt. How often had she been the one to carry the emotional burden while he had been absent, consumed by work? I promise, he said quietly, his voice firm. I'll be here. For you. For us. The following weeks were a slow, gradual process of rebuilding trust and reconnecting. Adam made a conscious effort to prioritize his relationship with Rachel, putting aside work when he could to focus on her. They went for long walks in the evenings, had dinner without the distraction of phones or work emails, and shared quiet moments that felt like a return to a simpler time in their marriage. But even as Adam tried to show up for her, he couldn't escape the realities of his business. The demands of his company were relentless, and he found himself constantly juggling between his professional obligations and his personal life. He was tired, more exhausted than he had been in years, but he was determined. He knew that if he didn't keep his commitment to Rachel, everything else would be meaningless. One evening, as Adam worked late in his home office, Rachel came to the door, leaning against the frame. Adam, she said softly, I know you're trying, but we're not doing this alone anymore. I need you to take a break. We've been through too much to keep living like this. Adam put down his pen, his mind already stretched thin from a long day of meetings and emails. He looked at Rachel, her eyes filled with concern, and he knew she was right. He had to change. You're right, he said, getting up from his desk. I've been avoiding this, trying to do everything myself, but I can't keep doing that. Rachel smiled faintly, a look of relief washing over her face. You don't have to do it all alone. Let's do this together. I'm here, Adam, but I need you to be here too. Adam walked over to her, taking her hand and pulling her into an embrace. It wasn't a perfect solution, and he knew they still had a long road ahead. But in that moment, he felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. He was finally on the right path. Adam sat in his office late one evening, the only light coming from his desk lamp and the faint glow of the city skyline outside his window. It had been a grueling week, full of endless meetings and demanding clients. Despite his efforts to balance his personal life, work always seemed to find a way to creep in. And lately, it was becoming harder and harder to escape it. As he scrolled through his emails, his phone buzzed. It was a message from Liam. Liam, we need to talk. The board is getting restless. I think we're at a tipping point. Adam's stomach dropped. He had known this was coming. The company had been struggling, and the pressure was mounting. But he had hoped, prayed even, that they would make it through. Now, it seemed the reality of his situation was unavoidable. He stared at the message for a long moment, the weight of it sinking in. He had worked so hard to build this company, to make something of himself. But at what cost? He thought about Rachel. He thought about the long walks they had taken together, the quiet dinners, the small moments they shared. He had made a commitment to her, to be present, to rebuild what they had lost. But lately, it felt like every step forward in his personal life was met with 2 steps back in his career. The demands of the company were taking more and more from him, and no matter how hard he tried, it seemed like he couldn't escape the grip of his ambition. Adam's thoughts were interrupted by a knock on his office door. He looked up to see Rachel standing in the doorway, her face gentle but filled with concern. Hey, she said softly, can we talk? Adam nodded, leaning back in his chair. He gestured for her to come in. Of course. What's on your mind? Rachel hesitated for a moment before speaking, her voice tinged with worry. I can't help but notice how stressed you've been lately. You're always working, always running from one thing to the next. I know you're trying, but I feel like we're slipping again. Adam took a deep breath, feeling the weight of her words. He knew she was right. He had promised her that things would be different, but he had allowed the demands of his company to creep back in. He had allowed it to take precedence over everything else. I know, Adam said quietly. I've been caught up in it again. I'm trying to fix everything, to make it all work. But the more I try, the more it feels like I'm losing control. Rachel walked over to his desk, her eyes filled with empathy. You can't fix everything, Adam. Not by yourself. You've been carrying the weight of this company, and it's affecting everything. I can see it in you. I can see it in us." Adam closed his eyes for a moment, feeling the sting of her words. He had been trying to do it all, to build his career, to repair his marriage, to live up to his own expectations. But he had lost sight of something crucial. He couldn't do it all alone. He needed help. He needed balance. "I'm so sorry, Rachel," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I've let you down again. I don't want to lose you. I don't want to lose what we've just started to rebuild." Rachel sat down beside him, her hand gently resting on his. "I know you don't, Adam, but you can't keep sacrificing everything for this company. You've got to find a way to make it work without losing yourself in it, without losing us." Adam's heart sank as he looked at her, the gravity of her words settling in. It wasn't just about his career or his success anymore. It was about finding a way to truly live the life he wanted, a life where love, family, and fulfillment came first. He thought about the board meeting with Liam and the pressure they were facing. He thought about the endless hours spent chasing clients, handling crises, and building the empire he had always dreamed of. But what was it all for if it meant sacrificing everything that mattered? "I don't know if I can do both, Rachel," Adam said, his voice strained. "I don't know if I can save the company and save my marriage at the same time." Rachel squeezed his hand, her voice steady and reassuring. "You don't have to do it alone, and you don't have to do it all at once. But you've got to make a choice, Adam. What matters more in the long run? A company, or the people who truly love you?" Her words echoed in his mind, and for the first time in a long while, Adam felt a sense of clarity. He had been so focused on building his company that he had forgotten the most important thing, the people in his life. And Rachel was right. He couldn't keep sacrificing everything for a dream that wasn't truly his anymore. He had a choice to make, a hard choice. "I don't know what to do," Adam admitted, feeling the weight of his decision press down on him. "But I know I can't keep going like this. I don't want to lose you, Rachel. I don't want to lose everything I've been working for, but I can't keep neglecting what really matters." Rachel looked at him with a soft smile, her eyes filled with understanding. "Whatever you decide, Adam, we'll figure it out together. But you've got to start putting yourself first. Your health, your happiness, our relationship, it's all connected. You don't have to choose between them." Adam nodded slowly, feeling the enormity of the decision before him. It wasn't going to be easy, but he knew what he had to do. For the first time in years, he was ready to stop running, ready to stop being consumed by the pursuit of success at all costs. The next few days were filled with uncertainty. Adam had made a decision, but that decision came with a cost. He knew that stepping back from the company was going to be harder than he had imagined. For years, his identity had been tied to the success of his business. Letting go, at least letting go of the intensity and constant pressure, felt like stepping into an unknown. Liam had already called twice. "Adam, we need to talk. Things are moving fast, and we can't afford to slow down now." Liam's voice had been sharp over the phone earlier that morning. Adam hadn't answered. He wasn't ready to have that conversation yet. But the truth was, Adam didn't need to be ready. The decision had been made. He couldn't continue this way. He had to choose Rachel, and he had to find a way to rebuild his life without letting the pressure of the company consume him. On the fourth day since his conversation with Rachel, Adam walked into the office with a sense of resolve. He had never imagined himself as the type to leave early or take a back seat in the company, but now he could feel the tension in his body, a tension that had built up over years of stress, long hours, and unattainable expectations. It was time to act. He walked straight into Liam's office, his mind set. "Liam, we need to talk." Liam glanced up from his desk, startled. "What's going on, Adam? You've been MIA for days." Adam took a deep breath, the words coming out slowly but with clarity. "I've been thinking about everything, and I've made a decision. I'm stepping back from the day-to-day operations. I won't be the one running the ship anymore." Liam's eyes widened in disbelief. "What? Are you serious?" "Adam, this is the worst time to make such a move. We're at a critical point. The company needs you." "I know," Adam replied, his voice steady, "but I need to make some changes in my life. I'm not abandoning the company, but I'm no longer going to be the one holding the reins every day." It's taking too much out of me. I need to focus on my health, my family, on my life outside of this office. Liam's face darkened. So, what? You think we're just going to coast along without you? You're the one who built this place, Adam. You're the reason we're still standing. You can't just walk away now. Adam shook his head. I'm not walking away. But I've realized that my life isn't just about this company. It's about more than the success of this business. I've been neglecting the things that matter the most. Liam crossed his arms, his expression hard. You're making a huge mistake. You've built this empire from nothing. You can't just throw it all away because of a couple of personal issues. Adam stood firm. I'm not throwing it all away, but I can't keep losing myself in it. I need to find balance, Liam, and that means I can't be here all the time. I'll still be involved, but I'm not going to carry the burden alone anymore. There was a long silence between them. Adam knew this wasn't going to be easy. He knew that Liam wasn't going to accept this decision without a fight. But this was the hardest thing he had ever done, and he couldn't back down now. Not for the company, not for anyone. I'll make the transition as smooth as possible, Adam added, his tone softening. I'll be here for the important decisions, but I can't keep burning myself out for something that's not fulfilling me anymore. Liam didn't say anything for a moment, but Adam could see the wheels turning in his mind. He knew Liam wouldn't give up without a fight, but Adam wasn't looking for permission anymore. This was his decision. He had to follow through. Finally, Liam sighed, the tension leaving his shoulders. All right, Adam. If this is what you really want, we'll figure it out. But don't expect it to be easy. You've put your heart and soul into this company. It's not going to be simple to step back. I know, Adam said quietly, but I have to try. As Adam left the office later that evening, he felt a strange mix of relief and anxiety. He had made a difficult choice, one that many would call reckless or short-sighted, but he felt, deep down, that it was the right one. He arrived home to find Rachel sitting on the couch, reading a book. Her eyes lifted when he walked in, and she smiled at him. Though this time, the smile wasn't cautious. It was genuine, filled with the warmth he had missed. "How'd it go?" she asked, her voice soft but filled with anticipation. Adam took a deep breath, walking over to her. He sat down beside her, his body finally able to relax after weeks of tension. "I did it," he said, meeting her gaze. "I told Liam I'm stepping back from the company. I'm not going to be the one running the show anymore. It's time to make room for everything else." Rachel's eyes softened with understanding. "I'm proud of you, Adam. It takes a lot of courage to make a decision like that." Adam took her hand in his. "I couldn't keep going like I was. I know it's going to be tough, but I'm ready. I want to be here with you. I want to be present." Rachel leaned her head against his shoulder, a contented sigh escaping her lips. "We'll figure it out. Together." For the first time in months, Adam felt at peace. He didn't know what the future would hold, but he knew that, for once, he was making decisions that aligned with his values, not just his ambitions. The first few weeks after Adam made his decision to step back from the company were a whirlwind. His absence from the office was felt almost immediately. Emails piled up in his inbox, his phone buzzed constantly with calls and messages from colleagues, and Liam, though he had agreed to the shift, kept pressuring Adam for his input on every little decision. Despite the mounting pressure, Adam stayed firm in his resolve. He had promised Rachel he would be more present, and he was determined to keep that promise. But every day felt like a delicate balancing act. One evening, as he sat down to dinner with Rachel, she noticed how tired he looked. The stress hadn't completely left him, even though he wasn't at the office as much. He had spent the entire day catching up on meetings and phone calls, trying to find the balance between work and his personal life. He was doing his best, but it wasn't always easy. "You look worn out," Rachel remarked, placing her hand over his. "Is everything okay?" Adam exhaled slowly, rubbing his eyes. It's a lot. I thought stepping back would give me more room to breathe, but instead, it's like I've been pulled in two directions. There's so much I still have to do, and I can't just turn my back on the company completely." Rachel gave him a sympathetic look. "I know this is hard, but remember, you're doing this for a reason. You made this decision for yourself and for us." Adam nodded, though a part of him still struggled with guilt. He had built his life around this company. To step away felt like he was abandoning a part of himself, even if it was for the right reasons. Later that week, Adam received an unexpected call. It was from his old mentor, Ben. Ben had been the one to guide Adam when he first started the company, and they had kept in touch over the years. He had always respected Adam's drive and ambition, but the tone of his voice on the phone was different this time. Concerned. "Adam, I've been hearing some things. You really think stepping back from the company is the right move?" Adam hesitated, trying to find the right words. "I think it's the only move, Ben. I've been running on fumes for too long. I'm burned out. If I don't step away now, I'm going to lose everything. My health, my relationships, my sanity." Ben was silent for a moment, then sighed. "I get it, Adam. I really do. But you know as well as I do that this isn't just a business. It's a part of who you are. I've seen how much you've invested in it. Stepping back, it's going to be harder than you think. And it's going to affect the people around you." Adam felt a knot tighten in his stomach. Ben's words hit hard. He had known the consequences of his decision would be tough, but hearing it from someone who had seen him through every stage of his career made it feel all the more real. "I know, Ben. I know. But I can't keep sacrificing everything else for this. I need to find some balance." Ben was quiet for a moment, then spoke again, his tone softer. "I admire your commitment to finding that balance. Just don't lose sight of who you are in the process, okay?" Adam nodded, though a part of him wondered if it was even possible to separate his identity from his company. But for the first time, he felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe he could rebuild, not just his business, but his life. Over the next few days, Adam focused on finding ways to recalibrate his work-life balance. He started delegating more to Liam and other trusted employees, trusting them to handle the daily operations. He spent more time at home with Rachel, going on walks, cooking meals together, and slowly rediscovering the simple joys he had been too busy to appreciate. But even as Adam took these steps, the consequences of his decision began to show in other ways. One afternoon, as Adam and Rachel were enjoying lunch on their balcony, Adam's phone buzzed again. He picked it up, glancing at the screen. It was a message from Liam. "Liam, we need to talk. The pressure is getting to the team, and some of the clients are starting to question our stability. If you want to fix this, you need to step back in. Things are falling apart." Adam stared at the message for a long time, feeling a rush of anxiety in his chest. The weight of the company, the very thing he had tried to distance himself from, was pulling him back in. He showed Rachel the message, and she sighed, squeezing his hand. "You knew it wouldn't be easy," she said softly. "But don't let them pull you back in too quickly. Take your time. You've earned the right to find peace, Adam." Adam nodded, but deep down, he felt torn. Part of him wanted to jump back in, to fix everything, to make the company thrive again. It was in his blood, his passion. But another part of him, the part that wanted a life outside of the grind, felt that it would be a huge mistake. He didn't respond to Liam right away. Instead, he took a few deep breaths and sat in silence with Rachel, trying to ground himself in the present moment. The future wasn't clear, but he knew he couldn't let the pressure of the company dictate his every move. That evening, Adam decided to meet with Liam. He had to face the reality that his decision wasn't going to be simple, but he needed to set boundaries, both for the sake of the company and his own well-being. "Liam," Adam said when they met in the office the next day, "I understand the pressure. I do. But I need you to understand that I can't go back to the way things were. I'm here to help, but I need us to work together to keep the balance. I can't run this company full-time anymore." Liam looked frustrated, but there was a hint of respect in his eyes. "I get it, Adam. It's just, things are a mess. But I'll try to make it work with you on the sidelines." Adam nodded, relieved that Liam was finally hearing him out. "That's all I'm asking for." The following weeks felt like a blur for Adam. He was still adjusting to his new routine where work no longer consumed every waking moment. He had cut back significantly on his hours at the office, but the pressure to re-engage remained ever present. It wasn't easy. Even with Rachel by his side, he often found himself thinking about the business, about the weight of those decisions still waiting for him. Every call with Liam was a reminder of the tightrope he was walking. "I need you in this, Adam," Liam had said during their last meeting. The team is hanging by a thread without you here full-time. You can't just let it slip away. Adam had listened, nodding, but there was a part of him that kept pushing back. He wasn't ready to dive back into that all-consuming world just yet, and every time the company tried to pull him back in, the tighter the grip on his chest became. But now, in the stillness of his new life with Rachel, Adam was beginning to notice something he hadn't before: the absence of true fulfillment. For years, he had defined himself by his work, but now that he had distanced himself from it, he realized how much of his identity had been wrapped up in that single narrative. It was during a quiet Sunday afternoon, as Adam and Rachel were taking a walk in the park, that Adam had an epiphany. They had been walking hand in hand, their steps leisurely as they talked about their hopes for the future. It was the kind of simple, unhurried moment that Adam hadn't allowed himself to enjoy in years. The soft breeze, the sound of children laughing in the distance, and the sunlight filtering through the trees. It all felt right. "You know," Adam said, stopping for a moment to look at Rachel, "I think I've been missing this for a long time. The simple stuff. Being with you, not rushing around, not constantly stressing about everything else." Rachel smiled, her eyes soft with understanding. "I think that's what we both need, Adam. Sometimes, we get so caught up in what we think we need to do that we forget to just be." Adam sighed, a weight lifting from his chest. "I've spent so many years trying to build something outside of myself, and in the process, I forgot to build what really matters. I forgot to build us." Rachel's eyes sparkled with tenderness as she squeezed his hand. "We're here now. That's what matters." The moment felt perfect, almost surreal. For the first time in a long while, Adam felt like he was exactly where he needed to be. His priorities were shifting, and he was starting to embrace a new sense of what success meant. Not just in terms of wealth or business achievements, but in terms of the relationships and experiences that truly filled him up. That evening, as they sat together on the couch, Adam received another message from Liam. It was brief, but it made Adam pause. "Liam, I'm doing my best, but I need more support. The clients are getting impatient. Please let me know when you're ready to step in more. I can't keep holding this together without you." The pressure gnawed Adam. He was trying to be the man he wanted to be, the man who was present and balanced, but the reality of the company's struggles continued to pull him back. "Should you respond to that?" Rachel asked, noticing the tension in his shoulders as he stared at the screen. Adam exhaled, rubbing his eyes. "I don't know. Part of me wants to jump back in. But then I think, what for? Will it really make me feel better? Or will it just take me back to where I was, lost in the grind?" Rachel turned toward him, her expression gentle. "You don't have to make a decision tonight. But think about what you want your life to look like. Not just what the company needs from you." Adam's mind raced. Could he continue to carry the burden of the company and still find peace? Was it possible to have both the success he'd built and the life he longed for? He set the phone down and wrapped his arms around Rachel. "I need to figure this out," he whispered. "I need to find a way to not lose myself in all of this." The next day, Adam decided to take a walk through his old neighborhood. He wanted to reconnect with the roots he had nearly forgotten. Those early days when he had started his business with nothing but a dream and a lot of grit. The walk was therapeutic. He passed by the little coffee shop where he and Rachel had spent hours planning their future, back when everything was still fresh and exciting. As he walked, memories flooded his mind. The late nights working out of his apartment, the excitement of landing his first big client, the satisfaction of seeing the business grow. But it also reminded him of the price he had paid. He had lost touch with his own needs, with the people who mattered most. Adam paused at a park bench, looking out over the street. It felt like a lifetime ago, and in some ways it was. Taking a deep breath, he pulled out his phone again. He had to respond to Liam, but this time, the message would be different. "Adam, I know things are tough right now, and I understand the pressure. But I want to be clear. I'm not going to go back to the way things were. I'm here for the tough decisions, but I'm not going to sacrifice my well-being again. We need to find a new way forward, together. Let's figure it out." He hit send and sat back on the bench, a sense of finality settling over him. For the first time in a while, he felt like he had made the right choice. A few days after sending the message to Liam, Adam felt a sense of uncertainty linger in his chest. He had made his decision, but the consequences of that choice were still unfolding. Every conversation, every call, felt like a step further into uncharted territory. But deep down, he knew there was no turning back. He had to find a way to balance his work and his life, even if it meant completely reshaping both. That evening, as Adam and Rachel sat down for dinner, he shared his thoughts. "I've been thinking a lot," Adam began, pushing his plate aside. "I need to make some serious changes to how I'm approaching everything. Not just work, but everything. I can't just continue juggling everything half-heartedly. It's exhausting." Rachel looked at him, her expression thoughtful. "What do you mean? What kind of changes are you thinking about?" "I've been working non-stop for years, trying to keep everything afloat, but it's clear that I can't do that anymore. I need to step up as a leader at the company, but I also need to step back in certain ways to protect my health and my happiness." Rachel nodded. "That makes sense, and I'm here to support whatever you decide. But what does stepping up and stepping back look like for you?" Adam paused, considering her question. I think I need to take a more strategic role. I'm going to get back in the office, but I won't be running the day-to-day anymore. I'm not going to let myself fall into that cycle of burning out. Instead, I'm going to focus on making the tough decisions, pushing the company forward, but also being more present at home, more present for us." Rachel smiled gently. "I think that sounds like a really healthy approach. You don't have to do everything, Adam. You just have to do what matters." Adam felt a weight lift off his shoulders. It wasn't going to be easy, but for the first time in a long while, he felt like he had a plan. A plan that allowed him to focus on what truly mattered without completely sacrificing his work or his well-being. The next day, Adam met with Liam. This time, he wasn't just going to be the CEO, the man with all the answers. He was going to be a leader who communicated, who delegated, who set clear boundaries. And it started with this conversation. "Hey, Liam," Adam greeted him as he entered the conference room, a serious look in his eyes. "We need to talk about where we're going from here." Liam looked up, his expression a mix of curiosity and concern. "What do you mean?" "I'm not going back to the way things were," Adam said, his voice steady. "I'll be more involved, but I need you to step up as well. You've been doing a lot, and I appreciate it. But I can't keep managing everything. We need to build a more sustainable model for the company, one where we can both take time for ourselves without everything falling apart." Liam's brow furrowed. "Are you saying you won't be involved as much?" "I'll be involved, but in a different way," Adam clarified. "We need to empower the team more. We need stronger leadership at all levels, not just at the top. And we need to bring in new people to help ease the load." Liam was quiet for a moment, then nodded slowly. "I see what you're saying. You're right. We can't keep running at full speed without burning out." Adam felt a wave of relief. This conversation wasn't easy, but it was necessary. It was a step toward building a company that could thrive without depending on one person to carry it all. Later that day, Adam reached out to some of his old contacts in the industry, looking to hire new executives who could take on key roles. It was time to build a team that could share the burden and bring fresh ideas to the table. It wasn't about relinquishing control. It was about building a sustainable future for the company and everyone involved. As the days passed, Adam found that the more he invested in creating balance in his life, the more clarity he gained about his role in the company. The weight that had once felt crushing was starting to lift. He still had work to do, but he was no longer drowning in it. He had taken the first steps toward reclaiming his life. That weekend, Adam and Rachel took a spontaneous trip to the coast. They rented a small cottage by the beach, leaving behind the hustle and bustle of their everyday lives. It was a much-needed break, a chance for Adam to recharge, to truly step away from the pressures of the business. As they walked along the shoreline, Adam couldn't help but feel a sense of peace. The sound of the waves crashing, the salty breeze, the warmth of Rachel's hand in his. These were the things he had been missing. These were the things that mattered. "I'm glad we did this," Rachel said, smiling up at him as they strolled along the beach. "Me too," Adam replied, his voice filled with gratitude. "I think I'm finally starting to figure it out. How to make this all work." Rachel raised an eyebrow playfully. "Make what work?" "Everything," Adam said, taking a deep breath. Work, life, us. I don't have all the answers yet, but I'm learning how to find balance. And that's something I never thought I'd be able to say. Rachel squeezed his hand, her smile soft. I'm proud of you, Adam. You're doing great. As they continued their walk along the beach, Adam realized that this was the turning point he had been waiting for. He didn't have to be everything to everyone. He could still be a successful leader, but he didn't have to do it all on his own. And most importantly, he could still have the life he wanted, filled with love, peace, and the freedom to enjoy the simple moments. It had been a few weeks since Adam's conversation with Liam, and things were starting to fall into place. The changes he had made to the business were slowly taking shape. He had hired a new executive team, delegated much of the day-to-day operations, and found ways to set boundaries around his work. He was no longer the person who was constantly on call, always glued to his phone, drowning in emails. But even with these positive changes, Adam couldn't shake the feeling of being at a crossroads. He had made huge strides in finding balance, but he was still unsure of where the future would take him. He didn't want to let go of his professional aspirations entirely, but he also didn't want to lose what he had built with Rachel. The tension was starting to grow. He had moments of clarity, where everything felt in harmony, like when he was at the beach with Rachel or when they spent quiet evenings at home. But then there were other moments when the weight of responsibility seemed to pull him back into the relentless cycle of work. He couldn't completely escape it. One afternoon, after a long meeting with the new leadership team, Adam returned home to find Rachel sitting at the kitchen table, her laptop open, a pile of paperwork spread across the surface. She looked up when she heard him enter. "Hey," Rachel said, smiling but her eyes betraying a hint of exhaustion. "How was the meeting?" Adam set his bag down and walked over to her. "It went well. The team is getting on track. But I've been thinking," he paused, not sure how to express what had been on his mind. "I think I'm getting caught in the middle of something. On one hand, I want to be there for you, for us. But on the other hand, I'm feeling this pull to do more with the company. Like, I'm not sure if I can walk away from the big picture yet." Rachel closed her laptop slowly, her gaze softening. "You don't have to choose, Adam, but you do need to be honest with yourself about what you really want. And maybe it's okay to be in the middle for a while." Adam sighed, running a hand through his hair. "But I'm afraid of losing myself in the middle. I'm afraid I'll end up neglecting everything again. It's so easy to get sucked back into the grind." Rachel stood up and walked over to him, placing her hands gently on his shoulders. "You're already doing the hard part. You're recognizing it. And that's huge. But you don't have to have it all figured out right now. It's okay to be in transition. You're not meant to have all the answers yet." Adam looked at her, her words sinking in. Rachel was right. Maybe it was okay not to have all the answers. Maybe the process of figuring it out was just as important as the destination itself. He took a deep breath, letting go of the overwhelming pressure that had been building. "I think I needed to hear that." Rachel smiled, her hands still on his shoulders. "I'll always be here for you, no matter what you decide." The next day, Adam took a walk by himself. He felt a deep need for reflection, something he had rarely allowed himself before. His mind was buzzing with conflicting thoughts about his future. He had always been driven by the idea of success, of building something lasting, of leading a company that could stand the test of time. But as he walked through the park, he realized that he had been so focused on the idea of success that he had lost sight of what success really meant to him. Success wasn't just about financial gain or accolades. It wasn't about reaching the next milestone. It was about feeling fulfilled, feeling like he was living a life that aligned with his values. And for the first time, he was beginning to see that there was more to life than just professional accomplishments. Adam stopped at a bench overlooking the lake and sat down. He pulled out his phone and opened up the Notes app. He began writing down his thoughts, organizing them into a list. 1. Work-life balance. I need to redefine my relationship with work. It's not about doing everything. It's about doing the right things. 2. Time for myself. I need to take care of myself, both mentally and physically. I've been neglecting my health and my happiness for too long. 3. Rachel. She's the most important thing in my life right now. I can't let anything take away from what we've built together. 4. The company. I still want to contribute, but I need to find a way that feels sustainable. I can't be the one who carries it all on my back. Adam stared at the list for a moment, realizing that for the first time, he had clarity. He had always been so wrapped up in the pressure to succeed that he hadn't stopped to think about what success actually meant for him, for his life. With newfound resolve, he began to make calls. He reached out to his board members and began planning the next phase for the company. This wasn't about him stepping back entirely. It was about creating a structure that could run without him always at the helm. He still had a vision for the future, but it was a vision that allowed room for balance. As the weeks went by, Adam found himself in a better place than he had been in years. He was still dedicated to his company, but he no longer let it consume him. He set clear boundaries, prioritized time with Rachel, and focused on personal growth. And for the first time, he felt like he was in control, not of everything, but of what truly mattered. Adam had spent the last few months rebuilding not just his role at the company, but his entire approach to life. The balance between work and personal time, his relationship with Rachel, and even his physical health. He had worked hard to recalibrate everything. The results were starting to show. He was present, he was focused, and most importantly, he was happy. But life, as always, had its way of throwing curveballs when you least expected it. It was a Tuesday afternoon when Adam received an unexpected call from one of the board members, Sarah. He had known her for years, and they'd always been on the same page about the company's direction. But the tone in her voice immediately raised a red flag. "Adam, we need to talk," Sarah said, her voice tight with urgency. "What's going on?" Adam asked, leaning back in his chair, his heart skipping a beat. "I just got out of a meeting with the senior management team," she began. "We're facing a situation with a major investor, and it's not looking good. If we don't make some serious changes, we might lose their support. The future of the company could be at risk." Adam felt the tension in his chest tighten. He had been working so hard to find a balance, to shift away from the constant pressure of being the one who had to solve every problem. But it felt like the universe was testing him. "What changes do they want?" Adam asked, his mind racing through the possibilities. First, they want more control over the company's direction. They're not happy with the strategic adjustments you've made so far. They want you to commit more of your time to the business, take on more responsibility, and shift the company back to its previous trajectory, Sarah explained. "And I hate to say it, but the team is already talking about how things are shifting. There's a real risk of losing their confidence if we don't act fast." Adam sat in silence for a moment, the weight of the situation sinking in. For months, he had been working to redefine his role, to step back and let others take the reins. He had made sacrifices in his personal life to maintain the balance, and now, it felt like it could all be undone with one phone call. "I don't know if I can go back to that, Sarah," Adam finally said, his voice low. "The pressure, the constant burnout, it nearly broke me. I can't let that happen again." "I know," Sarah replied sympathetically, "but the reality is, if we don't secure this investment, we may not have a choice. It's not just about the company. It's about everything you've built." The call ended, leaving Adam in a state of turmoil. He had always considered himself a man of integrity, someone who stood by his principles. But now, he was at a crossroads once again. Should he compromise on his hard-earned balance to save the company, or should he hold firm and risk the consequences? Later that evening, Adam sat across from Rachel at their kitchen table. He hadn't shared the full details of the phone call yet, but now felt like the time. "Rachel, I need to talk to you about something," Adam began, his voice hesitant. "We've been working so hard to build something sustainable, something that doesn't consume all of me anymore. But today, I got some news that's shaking everything up. A major investor wants me to dive back in, to take on more responsibility, to steer the company back in a direction I was trying to move away from." Rachel's face softened with concern. "What does that mean for you?" "For us." Adam ran a hand through his hair, frustration building. "I don't know. I feel like I'm being pulled in two different directions. On one hand, I know the company is at a critical juncture, and if we don't keep the investors happy, we could lose everything. But on the other hand, I feel like I'll be giving up everything we've worked for. Our time together, my health, all of it." Rachel reached across the table and took his hand. "I can see how hard this is for you. But remember, it's your decision. You don't have to choose between the company and me, Adam. You just need to figure out what truly matters. What kind of life do you want to build? You've worked so hard to get to where we are now. Adam's eyes flickered with doubt. But what if I fail? What if I make the wrong choice? Rachel smiled gently. Failure is a part of life, Adam. And no matter what happens, we'll be okay. The company, the investment, it's all important, but not more important than us. You've already shown me that you can have both, work and love. It's not about choosing one over the other, but about finding a way to make them both work. That night, Adam lay awake, his mind racing through all the scenarios. He could try to meet the demands of the investors, but at what cost? Could he truly go back to the way things were before? Running himself ragged, losing touch with what mattered most? His phone buzzed on the nightstand. It was a text from Sarah. Adam, I know this is hard, but I believe in you. We can make this work, but we need to know you're all in. Let me know if you're ready to take charge. Adam stared at the message for a long time. He knew Sarah was just doing her job, but it didn't make the decision any easier. Was he ready to sacrifice everything again for the company? Or had he already made his choice by deciding what was most important to him? The next morning, Adam went to the office early. He needed to clear his head and figure out his next steps. He sat in his office, staring out the window at the city skyline, weighing his options. The silence of the room was deafening, and for the first time in weeks, Adam felt the weight of responsibility pushing down on him again. But this time, he wasn't going to let it crush him. He called Sarah and set up a meeting. It was time to take a stand, whatever that would look like. Have you ever faced a decision where both options seemed like sacrifices? How did you choose the right path for you? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you've been following Adam's journey, hit like to support him as he navigates this crossroads. Adam's heart pounded in his chest as he sat across from Sarah in the sleek boardroom. He had spent the past few days wrestling with the decision, and now there was no turning back. The choice he made today would affect not only the future of his company, but also the trajectory of his personal life. Sarah had arrived early for the meeting, already seated when Adam walked in. She offered him a tentative smile, but Adam could sense the tension in her eyes. Thanks for meeting with me, Sarah, Adam said, sitting down across from her. I've made my decision. Sarah raised an eyebrow, clearly intrigued. I'm listening. Adam leaned back in his chair, trying to keep his emotions in check. He had gone through every possible scenario in his head over the last few days, and while the pressure of the situation had been overwhelming, there was one thing that had become abundantly clear to him. He couldn't sacrifice his newfound balance for anyone or anything, not even the future of the company. I'm not going to dive back into the role I was in before, Adam said, his voice steady but firm. I can't give the company everything I have again, not in the way they want me to. I've already been there, and it nearly broke me. I'm not willing to lose myself again. Sarah's expression softened. She had known Adam for years and understood the strain he had been under. She had seen the toll the constant pressure had taken on him. Still, she was surprised by his resolute stance. Are you sure? Sarah asked. We could lose everything. This is the most critical moment in the company's history. I know, Adam replied. But I've realized something important. I've spent too many years defining myself by my work and my success. I've neglected my health, my relationships, and my own happiness. And I'm not willing to go back to that. I've built something with Rachel that I value more than any financial gain or corporate achievement. Sarah sighed, her fingers tapping lightly on the table. You're making a tough choice, Adam. I can't promise that things won't get difficult. I know, Adam said. But I'm prepared for whatever comes next. It might not be easy, but I have to stay true to myself. This decision isn't just about the company. It's about my life, my future. There was a long pause as Sarah processed his words. Finally, she nodded. I respect your decision, Adam, she said quietly. It's not the one I would have chosen, but I understand it, and I'll support you no matter what. But you need to be prepared for the fallout. The investors might not be as understanding. I understand, Adam said, his tone softening. I'm willing to face the consequences, but I can't keep living in a way that isn't sustainable for me. Later that day, Adam called Rachel. He hadn't shared the full extent of the decision with her yet, but he knew it was time. He needed her support, and he needed her to understand why he had made this choice. When Rachel answered the phone, her voice was calm but warm. "Hey, love. How did the meeting go?" Adam took a deep breath before answering. "I made my decision. I'm not going to give in to the investors' demands. I'm not going back to the way things were." Rachel was silent for a moment, and Adam could almost hear the wheels turning in her mind. "You're sure about this?" she finally asked. "I'm sure," Adam said. "I can't lose myself again, Rachel. I've learned that the hard way. The company, the investors, they can't take priority over what's truly important to me." "I'm so proud of you," Rachel said, her voice filled with warmth. "You've come a long way, Adam, and I'm with you. Whatever happens, we'll face it together." Hearing her reassurance made Adam feel a wave of relief wash over him. It wasn't going to be easy, but with Rachel by his side, he knew he could face whatever challenges lay ahead. In the days that followed, Adam braced himself for the inevitable fallout. He had made his choice, and now he had to deal with the consequences. The company's investors weren't pleased, and there were tense conversations, but Adam stayed firm. He wasn't going to allow himself to be pushed around. He had taken back control of his life, and he wasn't willing to let go. As he navigated the fallout, Adam found himself growing even more resolute in his decision. He wasn't willing to sacrifice his happiness for anyone, and he knew that walking away from the all-consuming corporate life was the right choice. The company would survive. Maybe not in the way he had originally envisioned, but it would survive, and it would thrive in a way that didn't demand his constant attention. One evening, after a long day of negotiations and tense phone calls, Adam sat down with Rachel on their couch. She was curled up next to him, her head resting on his shoulder. They hadn't had much time for themselves lately, but in this quiet moment, everything felt right. "You did it," Rachel whispered, looking up at him with a soft smile. "I did," Adam replied, his voice full of gratitude. "And it feels good. For the first time in a long time, I feel like I'm on the right path." Rachel smiled, her fingers gently tracing his hand. "I'm so glad. You've worked hard for this, Adam. You've built a life that's worth living, and that's something no one can take away from you." Adam kissed her forehead, feeling a deep sense of peace settle in his chest. He knew that the road ahead wouldn't always be easy, but with Rachel by his side, he was ready to face whatever came his way. The company, his career, his future, they were all important, but he had learned the most important lesson of all: balance. It was about more than just success. It was about living a life that truly fulfilled him. And now, he was finally starting to understand what that meant. The days after Adam's decision were filled with uncertainty. He had made peace with his choice, but the ripple effects were far from over. The company was adjusting to his new role, and though he had reassured the board that things would continue moving forward, the tension in the air was palpable. His leadership was no longer defined by the all-consuming pressure to drive the company's every move. Instead, it was about fostering trust, collaboration, and sustainability. But Adam knew the next few weeks were going to be critical. One chilly Thursday morning, Adam sat in his office, staring out at the city skyline. His mind wandered back to the day he had made his choice. The weight of responsibility had never felt heavier, and yet, in his heart, he knew it was the right decision. Suddenly, his phone buzzed, snapping him back to reality. It was a text from Rachel. "Are you still on for dinner tonight? I was thinking we could grab that spot by the lake we used to love." Adam smiled. It was one of those little things they did that reminded him of what truly mattered. The simple joys of life, uninterrupted by board meetings and endless emails. He quickly typed a reply, promising he'd be there. The thought of spending time with her kept him grounded amidst the storm. Just then, his assistant, Lisa, knocked lightly on his door before stepping in. "Adam, you've got a meeting with the investors in 30 minutes. I've got the presentation ready, but there's something else we should discuss first." Adam frowned. "What's going on?" Lisa hesitated for a moment. "There's been some backlash. Some of the investors are really unhappy with the direction you've taken. They feel that you're distancing yourself from the company too much. They want more assurances." Adam's stomach sank. He had anticipated this, but hearing it out loud made it real. "How bad is it?" They've requested a meeting with you, Lisa said, her voice calm but firm. And they're not exactly going to be easy on you. They want to know that you're fully committed to their vision. Adam stood up, his mind racing. The thought of facing this confrontation made his stomach churn. He had promised Rachel that this wouldn't be about sacrificing his peace, but how could he explain that to the investors who held the future of the company in their hands? "I'll take it from here," Adam said, his voice steady. "Let's go." The meeting room was cold, the large glass windows overlooking the city giving it an impersonal feel. The investors, led by John Fitzgerald, a man known for his ruthless business strategies, sat across from Adam. He could feel the weight of their gazes, their eyes narrowing as he took his seat. "Adam," John began, his tone clipped, "we've been patient, but your decision to pull back from the company's daily operations is starting to raise serious concerns. The stock is volatile, morale is low, and frankly, the direction we're heading in isn't what we signed up for." Adam kept his gaze steady, trying not to let the tension in the room affect him. "I understand your concerns, John, but I've been clear about my stance. We need a balance, a direction that supports growth but also values the well-being of the team and the sustainability of the business." John's lips thinned. "Sustainability is fine, but we need results. We've given you time, but at the end of the day, this is a business. We didn't invest in a hobby." Adam clenched his jaw. He had heard this kind of talk before. The relentless drive for profit at any cost. But it was different now. He had made a vow to himself not to give up the life he had built for the sake of numbers. "I'm not asking for a hobby," Adam said, his voice growing firmer. "I'm asking for a strategy that works in the long run, not one that burns out the people who make this company great." John's eyes flickered with irritation. "You're out of touch, Adam. The market isn't kind to indecision. We need a leader who can steer this ship, not someone who's trying to be everyone's friend." The room fell into a tense silence as the investors exchanged looks. Adam felt his confidence begin to slip. What if he was wrong? What if this decision was costing him more than he was willing to admit? But just as doubt began to creep in, Adam remembered Rachel's words. "You don't have to choose between work and love, Adam. You just need to find a way to make them both work." He took a deep breath, steadying himself. "I've made my choice, John, and I believe in this direction. The investors who are with me on this, who see the bigger picture, will stay. The others, well, maybe they'll find someone else who better fits their vision. But I'm not going to compromise my values. Not now. Not ever." John stared at him, his face unreadable. "We'll see how long that lasts," he muttered, before standing up and signaling the end of the meeting. As Adam walked out of the meeting, his head was spinning. The weight of the investors' disapproval felt heavy on his shoulders, but he was resolute. He knew that he couldn't go back. The path he had chosen was one of balance and integrity, not blind ambition. Later that evening, as Adam walked into the restaurant by the lake, he saw Rachel waiting for him at a table by the window. Her smile was like a beacon in the darkness, grounding him in the present moment. "You look like you've had a long day," she said, standing to kiss him on the cheek. Adam sat down beside her, feeling the tension in his body begin to unwind. "It wasn't easy. They're not happy with me, Rachel. The investors want more from me, and I'm not sure they're willing to wait." Rachel took his hand, squeezing it gently. "You're doing the right thing, Adam. You've chosen what's best for you, for us. I believe in you." Adam smiled, feeling the weight of the world lift just a little. The future was uncertain, but with Rachel by his side, he was ready to face whatever challenges came next. The following weeks were not easy for Adam. The decisions he had made, to pull back from his previous workaholic lifestyle and to confront the investors, had created ripples that reached further than he had anticipated. At work, there was a quiet tension among the leadership team. While some respected his decision, others felt it was a sign of weakness or indecision. But the real weight came from his personal life. Adam hadn't realized how much the demands of his career had seeped into his relationship with Rachel. Their evenings, once filled with laughter and simple moments of connection, now often ended with Adam buried in his phone, responding to emails or reviewing reports, while Rachel waited patiently, her expression unreadable. She never complained, but Adam could see the distance between them growing, like a slow-burning fire that had long been smoldering. One evening, After a particularly grueling day of negotiations, Adam returned home later than he had promised. Rachel had set the dinner table with 2 plates of their favorite pasta, the soft candlelight flickering as if trying to maintain some semblance of normalcy. "I'm sorry I'm late," Adam said, slipping off his coat and tossing it onto the chair. Rachel smiled faintly, but didn't look up from the plate in front of her. "It's fine. I know things have been busy." Adam sat down across from her, his stomach tight with the familiar guilt that had been creeping up on him lately. He didn't want to admit it, but he knew he had been neglecting her in the pursuit of balancing his work and personal life. The tension between them was becoming more palpable with each passing day. "Rachel," Adam said, his voice soft, "I know I've been distant, and I'm sorry. I promised I would be more present, but I feel like I'm failing you." Rachel set her fork down, her eyes meeting his. "It's not about being present, Adam. It's about being here. Physically, yes, but also emotionally. I can't remember the last time we just talked. I can't keep waiting for you to figure out your balance, and I don't know how much longer I can be the one who supports you while you focus on everything else." Adam swallowed hard, the reality of her words sinking in. He had been so focused on making his big decision work, on proving to himself and to others that he could balance it all, that he hadn't realized how much he had pulled away from her, from everything that truly mattered. "Rachel, I'm trying," he said, reaching for her hand. "I really am. But the pressure is so much, and I've been trying to make the right choices. For us. For the company. For me." Rachel's eyes softened, but there was a weariness in them. "I know you're trying, but I don't want to be an afterthought. You're choosing everything and everyone else over us, and it hurts, Adam." The words stung, but Adam knew they were true. He had always been able to compartmentalize his life, but now the walls were crumbling, and he was faced with the realization that his relationship was the one thing he couldn't afford to lose. "I don't want to lose you," Adam said, his voice shaky. "I can't promise that everything will be perfect, but I'll work harder. I'll make the changes I need to." Rachel nodded, but there was a sadness in her expression that Adam couldn't shake. "I need to see it, Adam. I need to know that we're a priority, not just when it's convenient." The next few days were a blur of meetings, emails, and late nights. Adam threw himself into his work with renewed vigor, determined to prove that he could make things work. But as the hours slipped by, he felt the growing emptiness that came with the silence between him and Rachel. He knew something had to change, but it wasn't just about proving himself to the investors. It was about reconnecting with her, with the life they had built together. That Saturday, he decided to surprise Rachel. After weeks of tension, he knew he had to show her that he was committed to their relationship, not just with words, but with action. He picked up his phone and called the restaurant by the lake, the one they had frequented in the early days of their relationship. He reserved a quiet table by the water, just for the two of them. Then, he took the rest of the day off, making it clear to everyone that he wasn't to be disturbed. Rachel was surprised when Adam arrived at their apartment that afternoon with a bouquet of her favorite flowers. "What's all this?" she asked, her eyebrow raised in curiosity. "Something special," Adam replied with a grin. "Get dressed. We're going out." As they sat by the water, the soft hum of the lake breeze surrounding them, Adam felt a calmness that had been missing for weeks. They had talked without distractions. They had laughed. And for the first time in a long time, they were able to reconnect in a way that felt meaningful. Rachel smiled at him across the table, her fingers tracing the edge of her wine glass. "This is nice," she said, her voice quieter now. "I've missed this." Adam reached across the table, taking her hand in his. "I've missed this too, and I'm sorry for making you feel like I wasn't here. I promise, I'm not going to let this slip away. I'm going to do better." Rachel's eyes softened, and for the first time in a while, Adam saw the spark of hope in them. "I know you are, Adam, but it's not just about promises. It's about showing up. Every day." Adam nodded, his heart swelling with love and determination. "And I will. I'm going to show up." As they left the restaurant, walking hand in hand under the stars, Adam realized that the hardest battle wasn't the one with the investors or the company. It was the one within himself. The battle to prioritize what truly mattered, the people he loved, and the life he wanted to build. The future was uncertain, but in that moment, he knew he had made the right choice. It had been a few weeks since Adam's heart-to-heart with Rachel, and things between them had improved. There was a newfound understanding between them, one that had been missing for a while. Adam had made changes in his life, small but significant. He had set boundaries, learned to say no when necessary, and made an effort to spend more quality time with Rachel. Still, the weight of the decisions he had made hung heavily over him. Balancing his role at the company with his personal life was an ongoing challenge. And then, the phone call came. Adam was sitting at his desk late one evening when his phone buzzed. He didn't recognize the number, but something told him this wasn't just any ordinary call. He picked it up. "Hello?" he answered, his voice cautious. "Mr. Bennett? This is Heather Green, the senior partner at Whitman Enterprises. I hope I'm not interrupting, but we have an opportunity one believe you'd be interested in." Adam sat up straight, his heart rate picking up. He knew the name Whitman Enterprises, one of the most prestigious firms in the country. If Heather Green was calling, it could only mean one thing: an opportunity for a career-defining move. "I'm listening," Adam said, trying to keep his voice steady. "We've been following your work with your company, and we believe your vision aligns perfectly with some of the projects we're launching. We'd like to offer you a position as our Chief Strategy Officer. It's a significant step up from where you are now, and the role comes with a substantial pay increase, as well as the chance to take your career in a whole new direction." Adam's mind raced. The offer was everything he had worked for: a prestigious role at one of the top firms in the country, with a salary that would solve any financial worries he might have. It was a dream come true, the kind of opportunity that anyone would be crazy to pass up. But as he sat there, staring at the phone, Adam couldn't shake the nagging feeling in his gut. He had worked so hard to carve out a life that balanced his career and personal life. He had taken a step back from the all-consuming hustle. Now, he was being offered the very thing that had caused so much strain in the first place. I need some time to think about this," Adam said, his voice faltering slightly. "Of course, take all the time you need," Heather replied. "But let me know soon. We're eager to have you on board." After he hung up, Adam sat back in his chair, trying to absorb what had just happened. The opportunity was massive, and on the surface, it seemed like the logical next step. But deep down, he couldn't shake the feeling that accepting this role might mean undoing everything he had worked so hard to build in his personal life. That night, Adam barely slept. His mind was consumed with the decision. He thought about Rachel, about how far they had come, about the time they were finally spending together. He thought about the late nights and the long weekends he had promised to leave behind. And now, with this new role, those sacrifices could very well come flooding back into his life. The next morning, Rachel noticed something was off. Adam hadn't been his usual self, and she could see the worry in his eyes. "What's going on?" Rachel asked as they sat down for breakfast. Adam sighed and rubbed his face. "I got a call last night from Whitman Enterprises. They offered me a position as Chief Strategy Officer." Rachel raised an eyebrow. "That sounds amazing. You've worked so hard to get to a point where opportunities like that come your way. Why do you look so stressed?" Adam hesitated. "It's everything I've wanted, Rachel. But I don't know if it's worth it anymore. The job would mean a bigger salary, more influence, but I'd have to go back to the grind. The late nights, the pressure, the distance from you." Rachel set down her coffee cup and looked at him, her expression thoughtful. "I know how much you've wanted to take the next step in your career, Adam, but you're right. The last few months have been hard, and you've already made sacrifices. I've seen how much it weighs on you when you're constantly working. Do you think you'd be happy going back to that life?" Adam's chest tightened. Rachel was right. There was no simple answer. He had come so far in balancing his personal and professional life, but this opportunity felt like a golden ticket, a chance to prove himself on a larger stage. "I don't know," Adam admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "I'm scared of losing what we've worked so hard to build." Rachel reached across the table, taking his hand. "You don't have to make this decision alone. I'm here for you, no matter what you choose. But I want you to ask yourself, what is more important to you right now? The opportunity to climb higher in your career, or the life you're starting to build with me? The dream you've been chasing can't cost you everything, Adam. It can't cost us." Adam's heart raced. Rachel's words echoed in his mind, but the weight of the opportunity was still heavy on his shoulders. Was he willing to make that sacrifice? Was he ready to say no to the very thing that could redefine his career? That afternoon, Adam found himself walking through the park near their apartment, lost in thought. The trees swayed gently in the wind, and the sounds of children playing echoed in the distance. He took a deep breath, trying to clear his head. This wasn't just about a career. It was about his future, his relationship, and his sense of self. As the sun began to set, Adam knew what he had to do. He would not let the pressure of the offer overshadow the lessons he had learned over the past few months. It was time to step back again, to find peace with his choices, and to ensure that the balance he had fought for wasn't just an ideal but a reality. That evening, Adam called Heather from Whitman Enterprises. He thanked her for the incredible opportunity, but explained that after much reflection, he had decided not to pursue the position. It was a hard decision, one that left him feeling both relieved and vulnerable. But in his heart, he knew it was the right one. Rachel was waiting for him when he got home. When Adam told her what he had decided, she didn't say a word at first. She simply walked over and hugged him tightly. "You did it," she whispered. "You chose us. You chose what really matters." Adam held her close, finally feeling the peace he had been searching for. This decision was a turning point, not just for his career, but for his life. He had learned that success wasn't just about climbing higher. It was about staying grounded in what truly mattered. Adam woke up early that morning, the weight of his decision still lingering in the back of his mind. It had been a week since he'd turned down the position at Whitman Enterprises, and although he had no regrets about his choice, the ripple effect had been impossible to ignore. At work, some colleagues had praised him for his courage, but others, particularly the senior management team, had been less than thrilled. They had seen Adam as the future of the company, and his sudden reluctance to climb the corporate ladder had left them puzzled. But more than that, it had left Adam questioning his place in the world he had worked so hard to build. The truth was, while the decision to stay with his current company had been the right one for his personal life, it hadn't been an easy choice professionally. There were still days when Adam felt like an outsider, like the business world was moving on without him while he had chosen to step back. The ambition that had driven him for so long now felt like a distant memory, and the sense of fulfillment he had once found in his career seemed more elusive than ever. That morning, as he sat at his desk with a cup of coffee, Adam received a message that only intensified the tension he was already feeling. It was from his former mentor, Robert, a man who had always been a guiding force in Adam's professional life. Robert's message was blunt: "We need to talk. ASAP." Adam's heart sank. He knew Robert well enough to understand that this wasn't going to be a casual conversation. The tone of the message made it clear that something important was at stake. He grabbed his phone and called Robert immediately. After a few rings, Robert's voice came through the line, low and measured. "Adam, I'm going to get straight to the point. The board is concerned about your future at the company. Your recent decision to turn down the offer from Whitman Enterprises hasn't exactly gone over well with some of the key players. There's talk about restructuring, and I need to know where you stand. Do you have a long-term vision for your role here, or are you thinking of moving on?" Adam felt a tightness in his chest. He had anticipated that turning down such a prestigious offer might come with consequences, but hearing it so directly from Robert felt like a slap in the face. He had always believed that his commitment to his current company would be valued, but now, it seemed like it was creating more problems than it was solving. "I'm committed to my role," Adam said, trying to sound confident, "but I've made a choice to focus on my personal life, and that means finding a balance. I'm not willing to sacrifice everything for my career anymore." There was a pause on the other end of the line. When Robert spoke again, his tone was softer but no less firm. "Adam, I understand your desire for balance, but at this level, balance isn't always an option. The company needs leadership that's fully invested, and right now, I'm not sure that's you." Adam's stomach churned. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that if you can't fully commit, then it might be time to consider other options. The board may be looking at new leadership, and that could mean changes that affect you. Think about it carefully, Adam. We both know the stakes." Adam sat in silence, the gravity of Robert's words sinking in. He had expected some pushback, but the threat of losing his position hit him harder than he anticipated. For the first time in a long time, Adam questioned whether he had made the right decision. Was he really prepared to walk away from the only career he had ever known, just for the sake of personal happiness? Later that evening, Adam and Rachel sat down for dinner, but the atmosphere was far from the peaceful calm they had been enjoying lately. Adam was quieter than usual, his mind racing with the implications of Robert's call. Rachel noticed his silence immediately. "What's going on?" she asked gently, setting down her fork and looking at him with concern. Adam stared down at his plate, trying to find the right words. "I got a call from Robert today. He's not happy with my decision to turn down the job at Whitman Enterprises. He said the board is considering restructuring, and they might not see me as committed enough anymore." Rachel's face softened with empathy. "I'm sorry you're going through this. It's a tough situation, Adam, but you've made the choice that was best for you, for us. You can't let other people's expectations dictate your happiness." Adam rubbed his temples, feeling the weight of his conflicting desires. "I don't know if I can just walk away from everything I've worked for. If I stay, I'm not sure I can keep up with their demands. But if I leave, what happens to my career? What happens to my future?" Rachel reached across the table and took his hand in hers. "I know this is hard, but you have to trust yourself. You've already made a big decision, and it hasn't been easy. But you've chosen balance, and that's something you can't just give up. No one can give you your peace of mind. Only you can do that." Adam looked at her, the clarity of her words cutting through the confusion. She was right. He had worked so hard to build a life that allowed him to feel fulfilled outside of his career. He couldn't let the pressure of external expectations derail that progress. "I don't want to keep fighting this battle," Adam said, his voice a little firmer now. "I've already made my choice. I'm not going to sacrifice my peace for anyone else. I've worked too hard to get here." Rachel smiled, squeezing his hand. "I'm proud of you, Adam. No matter what happens, I'll be right here with you." The next morning, Adam made a call to Robert. He was calm, resolute, and ready to face whatever the future held. He knew that the road ahead wasn't going to be easy, but he had come too far to go back to the way things were before. He wasn't going to let his career consume him again. He was done making decisions out of fear of losing something. "Robert," Adam began, "I've thought it over, and I've made my decision. I'm not going to change my priorities. I'm committed to my role here, but I'm not going to sacrifice my life for the company. If that's not enough, then I'll accept whatever consequences come my way. I'm ready to move forward." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Then, Robert's voice came through, quieter but understanding. "I respect that, Adam. It's a tough decision, but it's your life. I'll let the board know where you stand." As Adam hung up the phone, a weight lifted off his shoulders. He wasn't sure what the future held, but for the first time in a long while, he felt confident in his choice. He had stayed true to himself, and in the end, that was all he could do. After the phone call with Robert, Adam felt a strange sense of relief. For the first time in months, he wasn't weighed down by the pressure of constant expectations. The burden of trying to fit into a mold that others had created for him was lifted. But, as with all decisions, there were still consequences that Adam hadn't fully anticipated. The next few days were a blur of tense meetings, quiet whispers in the hallways, and glances from colleagues that made Adam wonder if they knew more than they let on. He kept his head down, focused on the work at hand, but his mind was still racing. The future was uncertain, and no matter how much he told himself that he had made the right choice, a part of him wondered if he would ever truly be able to escape the corporate world that had shaped him for so long. One afternoon, as Adam was sitting at his desk, the door to his office creaked open. It was Vanessa, his assistant, her face pale and serious. "Adam, there's someone here to see you," she said quietly, glancing over her shoulder as if unsure whether to say more. "Who is it?" Adam asked, his curiosity piqued. She didn't say her name," Vanessa replied, still standing in the doorway, clearly uncomfortable, "but she insists it's urgent. Says it's about your future here." A knot formed in Adam's stomach. He had hoped the conversations about his future would be over, that he had cleared the air with Robert. But apparently, someone else had a different agenda. Adam stood up, brushing past Vanessa, and walked toward the lobby. There, Sitting in the corner of the waiting area was a woman he didn't recognize. Mid-30s, professional attire, with an air of confidence about her. She looked up as he approached, and her expression was unreadable. "Are you Adam Collins?" she asked, her voice steady. "Yes," Adam replied, now fully aware that this wasn't a casual visit. The woman stood up and extended her hand. "I'm Claire Thompson. I work for the board of Whitman Enterprises." Adam's heart skipped a beat. Whitman Enterprises. The very company he had turned down just days earlier. "I need to speak with you, privately," Claire said, her tone leaving no room for argument. Back in Adam's office, Claire settled into the chair across from his desk, her eyes never leaving his face. Adam sat, trying to maintain his composure, but inside, his mind was spinning. What could they possibly want from him now? "Mr. Collins," Claire began, "I won't waste your time. The board at Whitman Enterprises is impressed with your decision to turn down the offer. Most people would have jumped at the chance for such an opportunity. But we respect the fact that you chose a different path." Adam blinked, surprised by the compliment. I didn't expect that kind of response." Claire smiled faintly, but her eyes were calculating. "Not many people would have expected that. Which is why the board has decided to offer you something different. Something unique. A role that doesn't require you to abandon your values, but still places you at the heart of the company's future." Adam leaned forward, intrigued despite himself. "What are you offering?" "It's a new division we're launching," Claire explained. "A branch dedicated to corporate social responsibility, sustainability, and ethical business practices. It's a passion project for the company's higher-ups, and they've decided that you're the person to lead it. We believe your experience, combined with your recent decisions, makes you the perfect fit." Adam's mind raced. He had spent years in the corporate world and had always been focused on the numbers, the growth, the targets. But this was something different. It wasn't just about profits or expansion. It was about aligning business with values, something Adam had been grappling with in his own life. The idea of leading something that could have a positive impact was tempting. But there was a catch, wasn't there? Claire continued, "We understand that you're looking for balance, Adam. This role would allow you to have the flexibility you've been seeking. You wouldn't be locked into the typical corporate grind. We're offering you the opportunity to shape the future of Whitman Enterprises in a way that aligns with your beliefs." Adam's pulse quickened. The offer was tempting, more tempting than he'd like to admit. But he couldn't help but wonder if it was just another way to pull him back into the same old grind, the same pressures that had almost consumed him before. "I'll need some time to think it over," Adam replied, his voice steady, though his mind was racing. Claire nodded, as if she had expected this. "Of course. But just know that the board sees this as a pivotal moment, not just for you, but for the company as well. If you take this opportunity, you'll have the chance to create a legacy, a lasting impact. This is about more than business. It's about changing the game." That evening, Adam sat with Rachel at home, telling her about the meeting with Claire. She listened carefully, not interrupting, as Adam recounted the details of the offer. When he finished, he leaned back in his chair, waiting for her response. "That sounds incredible, Adam," Rachel said after a long pause. "But you know as well as I do that anything from Whitman Enterprises comes with strings attached. They're not offering you this out of the goodness of their hearts." Adam nodded. "I know. I'm just not sure whether this is another chance to prove myself, or if it's really the fresh start I need." "Do you feel passionate about it?" Rachel asked, looking at him earnestly. "I do," Adam admitted. "It's the first time I felt excited about work in a long time. But I don't know if I can trust them. What if they just want me to be their good guy, while they keep doing business as usual?" Rachel took his hand, her grip steady. "You can't predict everything, Adam. But whatever you decide, make sure it's something that aligns with your values. Don't let them shape you. Let this be the opportunity for you to shape them." The next morning, Adam stood in his office, staring out the window, his mind weighed down with the decision he had to make. He could turn down the offer, stay in his current position, and continue his quest for balance. Or he could take the leap, accepting the chance to shape a new direction, to lead change within an institution he had once been part of. It wasn't an easy decision, and it would come with risks. But Adam realized something as he stood there. This wasn't just about a job. It was about his ability to live authentically, to find a way to make his work meaningful without losing himself in the process. Adam sat alone in his office, the weight of the decision pressing down on him. The sun had begun to set, casting a warm golden hue across the city, but the room around him felt colder than it ever had before. His mind raced through the offer from Whitman Enterprises and the conversations he'd had with Rachel. Could he really change the company from the inside? Could he make a difference? Or would it be another chain around his neck? Another way for him to lose himself in the corporate machine? He glanced at the stack of papers on his desk. Contracts, reports, proposals, things he had been working on for weeks. It all seemed meaningless now. In those moments of quiet reflection, Adam realized that the true question wasn't whether he would change Whitman Enterprises. It was whether he could change himself. Could he take this chance to align his work with his values? Or would he end up compromising once again for the sake of success? His phone buzzed, breaking the silence. It was a text from Rachel, thinking of you. Whatever you decide, I know you'll make the right choice. A soft smile tugged at Adam's lips. Rachel had been his constant support, the one person who understood his struggle and who always reminded him to trust his instincts. It was easy to get lost in the noise of the world around him, but Rachel always pulled him back to himself, to the values he knew were important. The phone buzzed again, this time with an email notification. He glanced at the subject line, "Final offer from Whitman Enterprises." The message was direct, clear, and to the point. They were giving him one more day to make his decision. Adam closed his eyes for a moment, letting the weight of the situation settle in. His hand hovered over the keyboard as he drafted a response, unsure of what exactly he was going to say. But as his fingers typed, a sudden clarity washed over him. He wasn't just taking a job. He was deciding what kind of man he wanted to be. Did he want to be the person who sold out for a cushy title, who let corporate ambition define his life? Or did he want to be the person who could stand up for his beliefs, even if it meant taking risks? Without thinking too much, Adam hit send. "Thank you for the opportunity, but I must decline." He stared at the screen for a moment longer, taking in the finality of his decision. It wasn't the easy choice, and it wasn't the one most people would make. But for the first time in a long time, Adam felt like he had made a decision that was completely his own. Later that evening, Adam met Rachel at a small cafe they frequented. She had an expectant look on her face as he approached, but she didn't say anything. She knew that when he was ready, he would tell her. "So," Rachel said, a playful smile tugging at the corners of her mouth, "what did you decide?" Adam sat down across from her, his eyes bright. "I declined the offer." Rachel raised her eyebrows, clearly impressed. "Wow, you really did it." Adam nodded. "It wasn't an easy choice, but it was the right one for me. I need to build something that reflects who I am, not just what others want me to be." Rachel reached out and took his hand, her smile warm and supportive. "I'm proud of you, Adam. I know that wasn't easy, but you've always known deep down that the right decision wouldn't come from anyone else. It would come from you." For a moment, Adam felt a sense of peace wash over him. He wasn't done yet. He still had a long way to go, but he had taken the first step toward living a life that felt true to who he was. The journey wasn't about perfection or success. It was about authenticity, about making decisions that honored his values, even when it meant going against the tide. In the weeks that followed, Adam began to lay the groundwork for something new, something that was his own. He started consulting with small businesses, helping them align their operations with sustainable practices and focusing on corporate social responsibility. It wasn't glamorous, and it didn't come with a corporate title or prestige. But for Adam, it was more fulfilling than any job he had ever held. He had discovered that the key to success wasn't about making the most money or gaining the most power. It was about making an impact, no matter how small, and staying true to himself along the way. What do you think? Do we all have a moment where we must decide who we are, not based on external success, but on personal values? Have you had a moment like that? Share your story in the comments below.